Hello and welcome to MotorInc First. This time, Kartikeya has returned from Goa. He's an inveterate traveler and he's 2 photographs away from being a travel influencer. All he has to do is take 1 photograph in the aircraft and 1 at the location he's at. So anyway, he enjoyed the beach, had a great swim, and then he drove the Tata Curvv ICE, which is what we're going to discuss today, not his swimming.
I like Curvv ICE.
Curvv.ICE, which I prefer to pronounce Curvv ICE because I think it just sounds cool.
The Curvv.EV is only for the electric. The regular Curvv is just the Curvv. There's no Curvv.ICE.
But if you're going to normalize electric vehicles, shouldn't it be Curvv.ICE and then the Curvv is just the electric?
Beautiful. Should be done.
Okay, let's get to it. How do you want to do this? Discuss the differences to EV.
Why don't you ask me what you have in mind?
I think the first thing I would like to know is from the standpoint of the cabin and the interiors, is there a fundamental difference between the electric and the ICE?
Fundamentally, no, except on one front. So just to round this off, we've spoken about the Curvv EV already. So this is effectively the same car with a few subtle differences. And in the cabin, like you said, it's the same experience in terms of the design, the equipment. You'll find that it has a few extras compared to the Nexon. And we'll explain why we're comparing it to the Nexon as well.
Sure.
But compared to the Curvv EV, the real difference is in the backseat, where we said in the EV there was really no practicality. Here there is a usable backseat.
Okay.
Because the floor is lower by about 30 millimeters. It is, and trust me, I'm not tall, I'm 5'6", and for me, the Curvv EV was unusable because the floor was just like this. So there was no way I was going to sit there, and it just makes the knee room feel less. It makes everything feel inadequate. And now with the floor being lower, I could sit there comfortably, reasonably comfortably. So it's become a backseat that's not a problem anymore.
Okay. But the Nexon, from what I infer from that is, remains the better backseat.
Somehow, it still feels like the Nexon was more spacious, and that may be down to the headroom, because now with this still having that flowing roof and all of that, the headroom, even for me, and we'll put up the pictures here, in the backseat, if here compared to the Nexon, you can recline, adjust the seat. So if you're taller, you can have it slightly more upright, at which point you have a bit more headroom. I mean, I had a bit of headroom to spare, but if you recline it, and that means you're closer to the lower part of the roof, it's close.
Got it.
So here as well, for 6-footers, this back seat is not going to be good.
Okay.
It's not going to be something that you will not pick this car for the sake of the practicality as a family car or for the backseat experience.
Got it. It's a front seat driver's car, as it were. And just to contrast this, we also drove the Citroen Basalt, which has a similar fastback kind of roof. There, the headroom wasn't so much of an issue. Whereas on the Curvv in the EV, he very, very clearly said between the taller floor, which is because of the battery pack, and the curved roof, it was going to be a bit of a sticky wicket. Now he's saying it's a little bit better. If you want to know the full details about this car, I suggest some parts of this are in the Curvv EV MotorInc First. We will not be able to go into that level of detail again for this episode.
Correct.
We're going to do a lot more of contrasting between what happened on the EV and the ICE. And because the Nexon shares sort of the same platform, is at similar price points in some cases, there's going to be a lot of referencing between the Nexon as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, so in terms of the cabin, this is going to feel very similar to the EV, and also very similar to the Nexon.
Okay.
Compared to the Nexon, the real differences will be in terms of some of the finishes. On the dashboard, you'll see that there's that metallic kind of finish, which looks good. It's got richer colors for the leather upholstery, and it's got more equipment, of course. It's got a powered driver's seat. It's got a 12-inch infotainment system. It gets ADAS. It has a panoramic sunroof. We'll put the list up here for whatever the extra features are.
Right.
Which ones do I remember? Nothing really, because those are the powered seat. Sure, it's good. But you had ventilated seats any which way.
Correct.
In the Nexon, you get them here as well. You had a great sound system in the Nexon. You get another one here, which is maybe slightly better. It's a larger screen, sure. The thing about this car is, okay, I'm going to go wide view now, since we're into this conversation. It's said to be built on a new architecture, which is called Atlas. This car is a new nameplate. It's a new body style. It has a new engine in terms of the turbo petrol. There's a new transmission with the diesel. So there's a lot of newness in this.
Okay.
But the key thing that you should remember about this car is that it doesn't feel new. More importantly, it doesn't feel like a new generation experience. It feels like a very familiar car to drive, and that's the Nexon.
Evolved or not even evolved?
I can't even say that,
Oh, wow. Okay.
right?
All right.
So there will be certain facets which you look at and say that, yeah, this is better, but it's not that in its entirety. Like if you were to take one aspect and say that this is now a new gen experience or this is significantly better than something that the Nexon did earlier, I can't say
So
that.
it improves on certain of the older experiences, but doesn't fully say Tata to the old experience at all. Okay, got it.
So this is the key theme for this car. As much as it is exciting, and this is how I would break it up. If you were looking at getting a Curvv, you would do it for the lifestyle aspect of it.
Sure.
Which is that it looks different, which means you are cash rich. You're not worried about the practicality aspect of this car. You're buying it as a pure indulgence.
Right.
If you were thinking utility, this definitely will not work, because while this has been lengthened to fit into the 4.3 meter segment, which is to become a Creta rival, and in terms of the boot space, it's better than anything else in that space, right? Except the Basalt, maybe. It's better than everything else. But the actual experience in the backseat, that added length that the car has, is not functionally experienced inside the cabin.
Understood.
It's just the size of the car and the boot. That's about it. So buying this car just comes down to getting either the coolness of that shape or to get a new nameplate, because you've seen too many Nexons around. And so therefore, the Curvv is the same thing in a different look.
Yeah, and I was also thinking that you shouldn't buy two of these. Yeah, because if somebody, you have two of these Curvvs in your garage and somebody comes and says, nice Curvvs, it can be misinterpreted. You know, it's 2024 and we have to be super cautious about the things we say. So
it's a very familiar experience. And to me, now that I think about it, I think about the EV as the better option if I had to get the Curvv, because the experience is the more modern experience over there.
And you said that the range increment had also changed how useful that car feels in terms of being, I think you said it would almost be ready to be your primary car, especially if you were primarily going around the city with it.
Yeah.
And now you're saying that it adds up to a better car than the ICE. Okay.
Because this is from the standpoint of, okay, because we are saying right now this is a lifestyle choice, which means you're not bothered about the backseat. So you can discount that with the EV as well.
Right.
But the EV has the advantage of having a quieter cabin, having better performance. So it just feels richer on those fronts. Here now, when we're talking about the design, let's just quickly do that. This is, and there's been a lot of talk about this being built on a new architecture. For Tata Motors, the architecture is a combination of the platform, which is the hardware in terms of the chassis, and the software and the technology and everything that goes along with it, all that being layered on top.
And what he means by that is other manufacturers typically stick to hardware as the platform, and when fundamental changes happen to the hardware, then they say we change the platform. Tata Motors is adding a lot of integrations into it and saying this whole thing is a set.
So they're calling it an architecture, not a platform. That's the distinction. But the key point being here, this is the same body as the Nexon.
Right.
It has been revised, and which is normal for any, like we spoke about the last time, the Alcazar. The Alcazar chassis has also been beefed up. It is using different materials. It's using thicker materials in places, which is all what has happened to this body as well. And they're saying it has been done to improve crashworthiness further. And I would understand why that would be done, because this is now in a way being shared even with the EV. So you'd want the additional weight of the batteries to be compensated for and all of that. So they have beefed up the chassis. But it still doesn't make sense to me as to why this didn't transition to the Alpha Arc platform, which was meant to do this.
Correct.
It should have gone to that platform. And we've seen that when they made the punch on that, when they made the Altros on that, it became a modern experience. It felt like a step up from the Indica, from anything, the Tiago, whatever. It stepped up from there. So the reason why Tata has stuck with this platform and revised it, and while it can be called a new architecture, it's not a new experience. Why did they not move to the Alpha Arc and build this on the Alpha Arc?
You didn't get an answer to that.
I'm not getting an answer for that.
Okay.
And to which you had pointed out last time around, maybe something was not right with it. And I don't know. Unless and until we get an answer, we can't say.
Okay.
Right? So the best answer I got till now was it's good for a certain type of vehicle. So the sense I'm getting is for a certain bigger size of vehicle, that platform isn't quite cutting it.
Got it.
Right?
So visually, from the ICE to the EV in design terms, can you make out which one is which?
Not really, because aside from the grille and the wheels, there's not
Oh,
much.
because the EVs need the aerodynamic wheels and the ICEs still don't.
And actually, I think I prefer the designs of the IC because they just look cleaner. I mean, they have that Lambo style petal kind
More
of.
ornate.
It's a nice design. Some of their ornate ones don't work. This one works. So I prefer these wheels. But effectively, the way they look is the same. There's no real difference between them.
Okay.
Yeah. What else?
Interiors you said is more or less the same. I would suspect for the people who haven't seen it, can you just quickly run through like in 3-4 lines what is in the Curvv that they're expecting? If you want to see the details, you'll have to see the EV episode. He'll just give you a small brief as to this is the state of the interior in terms of equipment, finishes, whatever, so that we close that and get onto the driving and the engines.
If you've sat in the facelifted Nexon, then you know what the Curvv is like on the inside. There's no difference, like we said, because the body shell is the same. There is the experience on the inside in terms of the sensor space, how you're sitting, and what it feels like. All of that is the same. There's no difference. So we complained about the seating position in the Nexon being awkward because the steering is to the left and it's a little too high. That's the same here.
Got it.
That the 10-inch digital display is far and therefore it feels small. That's the same here. And on that note, it's the same experience here, even in terms of the UI and UX of that display, which means it's not great to read. It's not easy to navigate.
And this is the jumpy one where everything suddenly the screen shifts and gives you completely different. This is the
So
same.
that's in the Thar as well, and in so
okay.
it's in the Mahindras and with the Tatas. So somehow it's the similar thing, though they've done it in different ways.
Got it.
The screen has different layouts, so it can get easier, but I still think it's the same issue that you need to make it more readable. You need to make it simpler so that it's first. It's an instrument cluster which can give you your basic information easily rather than throwing in a whole bunch of stuff in there.
Got it.
Right? So the seating position is still awkward. You still have that wireless charger here, which means you still don't have a cup holder.
This is the question that you didn't get an answer to on the Curvv EV. This was the discussion where you said, okay, you want a wireless charger or a cup holder, and you said, why can't you have both?
Correct.
This is the same issue. Great. Okay.
So this time also I asked as to why it doesn't have, because I was with somebody else from Tata Motors, and I said, why does it persist? So I was told that this time was a different answer. It's the research says that customers don't need a cup holder because India doesn't have a coffee culture. So I think somebody should tell the Tata board that Starbucks needs to go back. Because
oh no, what a connection to make. I love it. And if Starbucks goes back, Cafe Coffee Day, which I think in my personal opinion makes far better coffee, to the fore.
So I was like, okay, this is a new one. This is unexpected.
Actually, if I were in that person's place, I would have given you the best answer.
What is that?
Saying, listen, every car, whether it looks like it or not, has a cup holder. It looks like this. And you just drive with the other hand.
Yeah, thanks, man. Not the message we want to send out, for sure. So again, the continuation of the Nexon theme in other ways, door pockets, slim, awkward, because the way you fit the bottles in is at this weird angle, in which case anything else that you kept in there, you can't really access.
Got it.
So all that stuff
it's still in the same place.
It's still in the same.
Okay. Just to recap the last part about the cabin, boot space. You said it was very good, but the Basalt might have more.
Yes.
Now let's move on to the driving of this car, because you said there is a new transmission in play and there is a new engine in play.
Correct.
All right.
So now you get, the petrol has been the 1.2 liter turbocharged. You now have a 1.2 liter turbocharged direct injection petrol.
TGDI.
GDI. They are calling it gasoline direct injection.
Not Tata gasoline direct injection.
No,
Okay.
no.
I'm not making a joke. I was just trying to understand it. Come on, guys.
So it's a GDI engine now. So gasoline direct injection. Quite simply, why is this happening? It's because as we go into the future, with other updates coming to it through its life to make it cleaner.
Yeah.
And so GDI just increases the control in terms of the combustion, which means cleaner emissions, better responsiveness, and better fuel efficiency.
Right.
On the fuel efficiency front, what I was told was that you can expect it to be similar to what the existing Revotron is, the existing 1.2 liter, but the real advantage is that it has more torque.
Right.
This has 200 and something, which is a step up from the regular Revotron.
Okay.
It's the same engine which has been adapted, so the head is different. It's for direct injection.
Yeah.
So the experience is not that different. The good part about this update is that at low speeds, at low revs, it's very nice and responsive. It's easy to drive. We drove the manual. We didn't drive the dual clutch with this. This new TGDI was driven.
TGDI nahi,
Sorry,
GDI.
okay, it's the same thing.
You told me that it is not the TGDI. You said it is GDI. Now you'd better stick with your guns and call it the GDI. Okay.
They call it the GDI, I said, man. But it's the same thing, right? Because it's turbocharged. Turbocharged is a must. And then it has gasoline direct.
So TCGDI.
Oh, God. Okay, now from now on, I will call it TCGDI at every point, okay? This TCGDI is easier to drive at low revs. It's smoother. But because it's also using the same architecture as the Revotron, which is the normal turbocharged petrol, it also feels the same.
Right.
So after a point, as you start, if you're not at low speeds, at low revs, driving easy, you'll realize that it starts getting that 3-cylinder thrum and buzz. When you rev it up, it's very obvious. So those familiar feelings are very much there.
Okay.
Which is why I said, while this on the engine front is a step up in terms of that ease of drivability.
It's not a revolution though.
It's the old one, the power delivery used to be like this. Like these are what we call as the peaks and troughs. So you think that when you accelerate, that the engine makes power in one clean pull. No engine does that. No engine.
Yeah.
Some will be smoother than the others and some will be worse than the others. So the power goes up and down. And which is when you feel that this car is not easy to drive. It feels a little awkward. You just don't feel in sync with it.
Correct.
And that was the case with the Revotron. It was really poor when it started off. They smoothened it out, but it still hasn't been great.
But this is already better than that. It's
This is already better.
Okay.
But if it were to have a new gen experience, I would have wanted the refinement to also be better so that it feels new gen.
Right.
Which is not the case.
Okay.
So like whether it's the thrumminess, the slight buzziness, so all those aspects make it feel all too familiar. So step up, but also the same.
So your only advantage, therefore, if I infer correctly, is since there's a little bit more torque, your driving at low speeds has become a little bit simpler and there might be marginal improvement in performance somewhere.
So ease of drivability, yes. Some performance gains, presumably, yes. But the main thing to remember here now is when you start thinking about it, if it's a lifestyle choice, by all means spend the additional 1.3 lakh rupees for it. But if fuel efficiency is going to be the same and the experience is not that much better, how many will really want to spend for this right now?
And you can just go back to the Revotron instead?
Yeah, Revotron is still available.
Got it.
The only thing is the Revotron won't be available in the top spec variant, which is the one with all the frills. What the frills are, I don't know right now.
Why not?
I mean, what are the steps between the second from top to the top? I don't remember clearly.
This is across the spread of 62 variants or whatever this thing has.
Whatever is available right now. So see, you can, whenever we can't get to the point of a car very clearly, we are not interested in the variants because then that's not really worth the hassle.
Okay.
So and we are clear that if you're buying this as a lifestyle choice, forget everything, just buy the top spec, right? So it's as simple as that.
Fair.
So that's the thing with the petrol engine.
Right.
I drove it with the manual. The manual also feels very familiar in the sense that the clutch is all right. It's not super light. The gear shifts are not clean. They are slightly scratchy.
Okay.
Okay, not terrible.
Which is also how it used to be earlier.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Got it.
The gear lever also has that plasticky knob on it, which we also spoke on the Racer, that it's just staring at you in the face over there. So all those things familiar. Then we go to the diesel, which is the 1.5 diesel.
This is the new?
No, this is
a new transmission, you said?
It has the new transmission.
Right. Okay.
So we drove the diesel with the dual clutch automatic.
Okay.
Up till now, the diesel was only available with an AMT or a manual.
Okay.
So now for the first time, you're getting a proper sophisticated automatic.
Okay.
And so yes, this is a DCT. And in that sense, it's a promise, but the promise is not fulfilled.
No.
Yeah, because again, this is what we spoke about,
See,
right?
don't become clickbaity, okay?
Don't become
Clickbaity. You keep style like building it up, building it up, building it up, and then it's not like that.
But that is how people look at it, right? Arey, dual clutch hai to, if it's a dual clutch,
No, remember in the Hyundai context, we said now they have a dual clutch. Earlier they had a dual clutch transmission. You remember this?
oh yeah.
Right? And in the same way, you're saying, okay, it has a
Okay,
automatic.
I'm going to take completely Shumi's vocabulary here in terminology. So we've moved from the TCGDI and now we are talking just about the TDI with the DCT, but this is not a DCT, this is a DCT.
Correct. Now you set the expectation correctly. See how hard was that?
So,
okay, so what? Shift slowly.
So if you remember, this is an affordable dual clutch.
Right.
This is a gearbox that Tata Motors has got from a provider, so to speak. It's called Punch Powertrains. It's a cost-effective solution. It uses a system whereby it has a multiplier gear in between to create the additional set of gears.
Okay.
It's not a quick transmission. It's not
Understood.
Been, it's not been.
So if you constantly think of DCTs as fast transmissions, which is exactly where they began, which is where the original PDK, the first DSGs in the top of the line Volkswagens, that's what they were for. What he's basically saying is, don't automatically connect DCTs like that anymore. They're trickling down the order, and as they trickle down the order, they're becoming cheaper to buy and put into cars. But that means a trade-off somewhere. In this particular case, the trade-off is in performance.
So imagine if you were to get a touchscreen in your car, but all it would do was play AM radio and would give you scanned copies of maps of your neighborhood.
Oh no, that's very, very low.
Right? No, because this is in terms of an experience. Is it better than an AMT? I'm not really sure.
Okay. Wow, that bad.
It's, see, the way I'm translating it is that it was not great even with the Revotron.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not the same gearbox because it's dealing with more torque with the TCGDI and with this TDI. So it's a larger unit which has to deal with more torque. But the experience with the Revotron earlier as well, it used to be slow. Now it's when it has to deal with more torque, that slowness gets amplified.
Got it.
Whenever it stutters or is confused, it's more obvious because it's having to deal with more torque.
Right. And when the torque returns, then you suddenly get pushback. Got it. Understood.
So as an experience, is it deserving of your expectations and your money when you're putting it down for something that's badged a DCT? I don't think it quite cuts it.
Understood. Okay.
Is it a convenience? Yes, it is a convenience.
But basically what you're saying is if Tata's AMT is half good, it'll feel at least as good as this DCT, and therefore there may not be any reason to spend extra money getting the DCT instead.
I haven't driven the AMT, but if the AMT is available and it saves me $1.5 lakh, okay.
Got it. Okay.
I would definitely take a close look at it.
Understood.
And this diesel, again, you have stepped up from the sub 4 meter SUV segment to this mid-size SUV segment where the Creta, Seltos, Grand Vitara, everybody is sitting here.
Yeah. And there's some really good cars in there. So every time you slip up even slightly, it looks more magnified is where you're going with this, I think.
Especially now because we're talking about diesels.
Yeah.
And the diesels of the Hyundai Kia diesels have been
Very
fantastic.
Yeah.
That engine has been a benchmark. And this engine now, when you step it up, yes, it's 1.5 liters of displacement. It has about the same horsepower. But is the experience befitting the class?
You have doubts.
I don't have doubts. It's not smooth enough. It's not quiet enough.
See, I try. What I was whispering to you because you were talking is, see, I tried to ameliorate a little bit, but clearly.
No, my concern in this is that this car is so pretty for people. Like it's so dramatic, let's say, not pretty. It's so dramatic. You will, and it is completely understandable that you will walk in, and we've heard so many people saying that they don't test drive a vehicle, they don't spend time to experience it because they think it looks so good that they just go ahead and commit. If you are going to do that with this significant chunk of money, I'd much rather you be clear about what you're going to get.
Right.
So you are happy with whatever decision you make. So bottom line, if I have to put it in one way, is that if it's a functional decision, you would be just as happy with the Nexon.
Right. Probably happier because of the backseat.
Yeah, and by the money saved.
Yeah.
So those are the things just I want to be very clear about because this engine and this experience, I would have been okay with the Nexon.
Right.
I'm not saying it's a great experience because even then you have the Sonnet with the diesel, which is a very refined and upmarket experience. So it's
fair enough.
It's not quite cutting it. Suspension.
Yeah, I was going to come to that. Fundamental weight difference between the electric and the ICE. Have they readjusted the suspension? What does it amount to?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they have readjusted it. And the Tata engineers that we spoke to afterwards were a little surprised because our experience between the petrol and the diesel was dramatically different.
Which they weren't expecting you to say.
Yeah, that's what took me by surprise because I thought they're going to say that yeah, obviously because it's a diesel, and I thought that because the diesel plus dual clutch, so the weight will be a lot more. To which they said that actually the dual clutch is lighter than the manual.
Okay.
So weight penalty from the dual clutch should not be the issue. So the petrol felt more nicer. Let's just say nicer. It's a Nexon experience, which is to say that it'll take the big stuff nicely, but whenever you are going over smaller stuff, it's always reacting. It's always moving around a little bit, so you never feel settled enough. So that continues here as well. With these 18-inch wheels that this car has, the top spec variant has, I think there's a little bit too much of road noise, tire noise coming into the cabin, which is why, again, it doesn't feel like a new gen experience on that front.
So if I'm correlating to the Basalt, you're basically saying the Citroen's cabin in terms of silence and in terms of the comfort level from the suspension and wind noise insulation, it's all going to make the Curvv look like it's not in the same league.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
This is, in terms of the experience, the Curvv does not fit this segment.
So Tata is trying to position it as something above the Nexon, but you keep coming back to the conclusion saying it's not moved on far enough, it's still the Nexon.
In fact, I was discussing the car with somebody after I drove it, and my reference was always coming back to Sonnet and the cars in that category. And the person I was talking to was like, why are you comparing it with them? I said, because to me, it doesn't make sense to compare it like in my head. And it's not a conscious thing. I just ended up doing it. And I was like, clearly, it's not fitting for me in the segment above.
Okay, just so that they are clear, if Tata were to have succeeded at the job of making this look like a car from a segment above the Nexon, where should your mind naturally have gone to? Which car would have come as the comparison in your head instead of the Creta Nexon Sonnet?
Yeah, so if you were looking if I have to look at a lifestyle option, the cool car in this segment will automatically go to the Seltos. If I'm looking more practical, I'm thinking more family oriented, then I would go with the Creta. My personal favorite, of course, is the Grand Vitara because I like the hardy mechanicals that it has. The suspension is ace. It's not the plushest cabin.
But you're not reaching that conclusion when you drive the Curvv. You keep thinking of something one segment below.
Yeah.
Got it.
Because like, see, even think about it. The Grand Vitara with its more affordable engine is that 1.5 liter mild hybrid. It's not an enthusiastic engine. It's not great at all.
But you always think of it as competent.
For somebody who wants utility, it's nailing it. Because the efficiency is good, its drivability for every day is good, its 6-speed automatic is convenient enough, smooth enough, it's ticking off all the boxes without being wow.
Understood.
Right? So, and whereas a strong hybrid is a completely different proposition altogether. So it doesn't quite set new benchmarks on any front. It doesn't quite improve on benchmarks that it set in its other body style, which would be the Nexon, the smaller. I don't see it. It's taking that step up to say that I actually belong in the segment above. So in the refinement aspect, I spoke about it with the petrol. With the diesel, it became the suspension was so much stiffer that going over some of those rumble strips, those painted strips. Whereas the petrol would just ride over them so nicely, the diesel would rattle over it. Like literally, you could see the front seat shaking, like because I was sitting in the back seat. I could see that just going like that. I think the two good things about this car that I appreciated while being in it was, of course, the back seat. That one thing that they do is that the seat base is so long; it's really sofa-like. So that is the one highlight, which is that aspect of the back seat. And the other is, yes, it does move around like that. But the road holding, the way it feels stuck to the road, that is definitely a plus. It was a plus for the Nexon until the facelift. I think with the facelift, when they softened the rear, it became a little reactive if you're moving fast.
Sure.
But here you can feel that it's settled. It's very composed. So that's a good part about it.
Okay.
So those were the two things. And
did you have fun driving it while you were driving it? The petrol or the diesel or either?
No.
So this is not that kind of car.
No, this is not a fun, sporty car. So it has drive modes. So you guys had told us that it was possible to switch off the drive mode
Oh yeah, when
voice.
they appreciated how well you replicated the voice on the MotorInc First.
Not
also,
doing
yes.
it again, okay?
I didn't ask you to.
Yeah. So in this, it just makes a ding sound when you do the mode change. That's about it. On that note, with the turbo petrol, it has an overboost function, which they call something, I've forgotten, sport something. Anyways, so if you put it in sport mode, the peak torque of 225 Nm is available in that. And it has an overboost function because it now gets a new variable geometry turbo. So when you accelerate hard, it gives you 250. So for a little bit, you get a bit of an extra rush.
Got it.
And in sport mode, you feel that it's moving faster, it's more enthusiastic. But I would like to start making this distinction that there can be quicker cars, but they don't necessarily have to feel sporty. Sporty is a sense of connection that you get with a vehicle where it talks to you about what it's doing and involves you. So cars with these modes go faster, but they don't become sporty. And I think that's for most of them.
Yeah, and to us, across motorcycles and cars, sporty is a much well-rounded a definition than just a fast engine. A fast engine doesn't make it sporty. Sporty has chassis, it has feedback, it has a sense of connection, involvement, and performance can add to that or take away from that. But if you just give the performance and leave the other things out, you get a fast Harley Davidson, which can be fun, but you won't call it sporty automatically.
Correct, absolutely. So, so the turbo petrol has that. What else?
It's a Tata launch, right? So I have to ask you quality questions. How's the quality of the Curvv ICE?
Hey man, how was your weekend?
Don't deflect.
No, you already made me look bad.
I'm not making you look bad. I'm completing the picture of the story, right?
Where do you get that ring from? Everybody keeps asking that black ring of yours.
Amazon. And I wear it on the middle finger for a reason. Can we get back to what we're about here? How was the quality of the Curvv ICE?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Was it the same as the EV or not at least?
No.
Why? Oh, come on. Is it better?
No.
See, I'm asking the leading questions, hoping to take it to a better place. He keeps saying no. It's not my fault.
I'm answering the questions.
What happened? Why do you perceive it as not as good as the EV? What happened?
So, if there was an improvement, it was that the eyebrow had gone off on the
Again?
EV. It didn't go off.
It didn't go off.
It didn't go off. I went and I checked, and I saw every car that drove past me of the ICEs. ICEs. Sounds wrong. All the other test car, media cars that drove past, none of them had the brow gone. So that was a step in the right direction.
This is a very low bar and it's making you look worse. You should just answer the question.
Okay, I had discoloration on the hood right above the Tata logo. You could see it very clearly. I've got it on a video. The door locks jammed. They stopped working.
Were you in or outside the car?
I was inside and I was trying to open the boot and I just couldn't open the boot. Then I came inside the car. I'm hitting the unlock button and it's just doing tick tick. I thought it should open. It's not opening. Then I realized I'm going to run through this. None of the internal door locks were either opening. So I stepped out again. You'll see that on the video. I'm trying to open the door from the outside. And on this point, I would like to bring up that the new stupid door handles which are becoming a fad, which are stuck in. If you have to have an indicator light to point out where the door handle is, it should be on the section that you want to press into so that's where you aim for. Instead, that indicator light is on the part that pops out, which doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. So please fix that. So the door locks didn't work. So I had to shut down the car and restart it.
But you could have climbed out through the sunroof, no?
No, I could get out, but none of the other doors or the boot were unlocking. So that's all there on video, and you can see me trying.
So this is the I'm tired of my family mode. It's a setting.
So you lock them in.
You lock them out. And you're like, I can't do anything. It's just not willing to unlock the door or the boot. I can only drive now.
Then there was the ADAS, which wouldn't allow me to turn off lane departure warning and lane keep assist.
It won't let you turn it off at all.
So again, I've got that.
As in like a glitch, or there is no way to turn it off?
So I thought it was a glitch. I thought the software is incomplete.
Oh, okay.
And then I got into the diesel and I was driving the diesel and it didn't allow me to do it at first. In the meantime, I'd called the people at Tata saying that, hey, I want to turn this off. How do I do it? And they were trying to figure it out. In the meantime, I'd swapped cars. I'd gone into the diesel. And I tried it in the diesel. It didn't happen. Then I stopped at some point because it's constantly making notes and taking photos or whatever. So when I got back in, I tried so the other reason why I had to do it every time was, every time you switch off the engine and turn it back on, it resets the ADAS setting. So ADAS comes back on. instead of remembering what your last setting was.
Yeah, so I know that KTM used to do this when they'd first done the electronics on their bikes, and everybody who rode the KTM said this is the most annoying thing because you take this electronic suite and you set it up the way you like it. And then every time you switch on the bike says, no, I know better, and resets the whole thing. And it was really annoying. And from whatever he's saying, if I buy this car and I set it up a certain way with the ADAS functions, whatever, and it keeps resetting, it is going to be really annoying to live with.
There were some small things like that. So,
Okay, then what were the big things, Kartik?
so like the touchscreen responsiveness was laggy. It just couldn't make sense of
Was it the same on the Curvv.EV as well, the lagginess?
we mentioned that this screen looks great. And like we were talking about the Alcazar, where the 360-degree cam is not executed all that well. Here it's done really well. But this lagginess is something that we've seen across.
Okay.
But here it felt more pronounced. I don't know why.
Because you're in Goa, bro. Everything in Goa moves a little bit more chill and slower
Yeah,
vibes.
probably.
Yeah.
So that was with the infotainment, which is small stuff, the usual digital instrument cluster stuff where it's hard to read, and that's par for the course. Somebody else, I was just coming back with the car, and somebody else came in with a car, and I happened to see that their rearview mirror had fallen off. Yeah.
But you have ADAS, right? You don't need it.
Apparently they said that they had just adjusted it and they were parked on it.
Dude, I don't understand.
Yeah.
We've done a few Tata cars together in the MotorInc Firsts, right? I remember Punch-EV, Nexon, Nexon-EV, previous Curvv, and Altroz Racer, and they all seem to have these stories.
Yeah.
Is there at least a movement you're seeing towards something that solves these as a bigger picture, some small movement?
No, in fact, I think it's gotten worse.
What?
No, because see, there's a very simple reason for that. Because you remember when the XUV500 came out, it was a mess.
Yeah.
Because they added a whole bunch of electronics.
Correct.
And electronics are super hard to do.
Yes.
So the second you add electronics, things get.
Yeah, I think Mercedes-Benz also went through that phase when the E-Class went from being non-electronic to electronic, and immediately there was like a problem with the E-Class, remember?
So like when I used to work at the garage, we were, Amjad and I were the two guys. There were a lot of people working in the garage, but we would work on the motorcycles and like do all the servicing and all of that. But if an electronical problem came up, both of us would just step back because we were not good at it.
Yeah.
We were not good at it. I'm straight up about it. Electricals was always my weak spot.
Correct.
So I would just take a step back, and we had our friend Subodh. We would tell Subodh, please come. You need to take a look at this. He'd come. And he had that mindset for it. He was happy to sit patiently, take
A multimeter and do here and here and here and here and say, I think it's here.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
Right. So there's a mindset that's needed for that. It's a mindset that car manufacturers today have to rally themselves around. Because traditionally they've been used to making machines.
Yeah.
But today's electronics that are more and more central to the machine. So I think fixing these things is more and more difficult.
Yeah, and I don't want to take away from the challenge of it also. Okay, remember, a vehicle is out there. It is considered to be made waterproof, which means somebody has to do that work. It's a fairly complicated electronic and electric system that has its own complexity. So to be able to make something that reliably runs glitch-free for a really long amount of time in all sorts of shit conditions outside, it's a really tough job to do. The only thing is, people have done it for 70 years now, reliably. So there's no reason why Tata can't figure it out. It's just that whatever is, there is a gap there, and this gap is not, as far as we can tell, getting filled up fast enough. That's all.
And I'll give you one small example. Like if you look at the Safari and Harrier, which have now been out for almost a year, let's say. And this is the one thing I want you to notice. When you see them at night driving towards you, when you see that connected LED DRL, look at it closely. You don't have to look at it like go close and look at it, but just look at it. The finish of it is incomplete. And I've got clips from this car as well where you can see it up close. So those are the small things that just take away from that premiumness of the experience. And again, like we said last time, if this is okay, if these kind of things you're okay to deal with, we are happy for you to
Fair enough.
Make the decision, take the pick. It's just something that I don't think he would consider as normal or okay.
No, I don't consider it normal at all. I have a very high expectation of quality, and if you can't meet that expectation of quality, I'm sorry, but I can't spend my money on it. I work really hard for my money, and I cannot see why I should spend it on anything less than what I think is at least my minimum. All right. Nexon, Curvv, Curvv ICE. Qualitatively, they're all roughly the same.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Which is, I mean, I open with that. I don't see this as a step up in terms of the experience. The specs and the brochure says that, but the actual experience inside the cabin is not that.
okay, ठीक.
It's, I mean, the real step up is the boot.
Suitcase, happy. Okay, is there any other question that I have to ask you? Quality, I asked you. Okay, so I think we've made our point. Quick summary.
Okay, before you start pricing,
Yeah.
I referred to the turbo, the TCGDI as being 1.3 lakh rupees more expensive. That's the case. By and large, you're going to spend more for the Curvv, of course, over the Nexon. Not all the engines are available in all the variants. Like I said, the Revotron is not available in the top spec, though that might be the one that might make most amount of sense for you. So value-wise, it's going to be a bit of a stretch for the body style, but if it appeals to you, like we said right at the start, it's a lifestyle call. Take it.
Got it. Okay. Time for my quick summary. Kartik has just returned from driving the Curvv ICE. In this MotorInc First, we haven't gone into full details on this because we drove the Curvv.EV, and the first thing Kartik said is on a lot of fronts, especially the cabin, it's more or less exactly the same car as the EV with a few minor features added, a few minor features removed at best. The big improvement is on the Curvv.EV, the floor pan is pretty thick because of the batteries. It's not on the ICE, so the floor is actually lower, and that allows the second row to have quite a bit more space. So at 5'6", he felt a little bit cramped and he found the EV difficult, but the ICE is at least usable. He still doesn't think it's awesome. If you want an awesome backseat, you still have to go back to a Nexon. The front was reasonably okay in the Curvv.EV. It is also reasonably okay here. You have the same screens and whatever. It's not going to go into it. At the front, design-wise, the only way to differentiate the EV from the ICE really is the grille. And behind that, the body style is all very similar. The other big difference you'll notice visually are the wheels. The electric needs the aerodynamic wheels to make the car more efficient, but somehow the ICEs don't warrant it. Instead, you get a nice looking Lamborghini style petal design on the wheels, which do look good. 18-inch wheels, so there are a few issues with ride quality, and I'll come to that in just a minute. On the powertrain front, there's two things you need to know about. The diesel now has a brand new DCT option. Previous to this, I had the AMT and the manual only. And the new petrol engine is the top of the line engine, which is called what? GDI, which is called gasoline direct injection, GDI. We call it the TCGDI throughout this because it's the turbocharged gasoline direct injection engine. Fundamentally, Kartik says there's not a big difference or gain in this engine, but this is a future-proof engine. So as emissions get tighter, Tata will be able to use the GDI engine to do a lot more with. Today, it gives you a little bit more torque. It's a little bit smoother to drive off the bottom, but that's about it. And what he's a little bit disappointed about is when you're normally driving the car, is there a jump in smoothness or refinement or something that says, yes, brand new engine? Unfortunately, it's not there. Right? On the diesel front, the DCT, again, he has similar kind of issues with it. It is supposed to be a dual clutch transmission, but do you get a performance benefit out of it? No, it's a slow transmission. But because the diesel is more torquey, the jerks that you feel as the gears change and the thing releases the gear, you'll feel it a lot more. So it's not as smooth as it could have been. And in that sense, would you want to pay 1.3 lakh, 1.5 lakh rupees extra for this DCT? Perhaps the AMT will be a better solution and save that money. Unfortunately, he also thinks the same way about the petrol engine, because he says, since you don't get a big gain over the older engine, which they used to call the Revotron, when you get to the GDI engine, maybe you don't want the GDI engine either and save 1.5 lakh rupees there too. The issue there is how they've trimmed these cars, because if you want the top of the line Curvv ICE, and he doesn't know why you would want it, but if you want the top of the line Curvv, you will have to opt for the GDI engine, and that expense will have to be paid for because the Revotron doesn't go all the way to the top spec at all. The fundamental thing that Kartik is saying is that Tata is positioning this car as something that sits above the Nexon, but every time we drive it, we don't seem to reach the conclusion that this is a car versus the Creta or versus the Seltos or something, the cars that we think create the benchmarks for this segment. We keep defaulting back to cars like the Sonnet and the Nexon, which are technically the segment below. And the Nexon platform, more or less, is what powers the Curvv also. Although Tata says the architecture is different. Architecture platform, it's a little bit of a nuance there. It's fundamentally the same thing with a few software and various things added up. And the problem with added up is, in the Curvv's case, it's not fully adding up just yet. On the quality front, again, we didn't see a fundamental change in the quality perspective of Tata cars that we've seen so far at these drives. This car also had niggles and glitches. And again, that's a fair warning. But what Kartik is saying is fundamentally that the Curvv has so many practicality issues built into the way it's designed that to him, this is a lifestyle purchase. If you're making a lifestyle purchase, you're assuming this is not your primary vehicle and money is not your primary concern, in which case, if you can live with these flaws, there's no reason why you shouldn't consider a Curvv. But if this is a critical purchase because this is your primary vehicle, this is something your family is going to use, you're going to use it every day around the city and outside on the highway, then you can certainly do better with your money than buy one of these Curvvs. Fundamentally. Now, if you're choosing between the electric and the ICE Curvv, I think he was a lot more impressed with the EV experience because it got more performance, it's now got reasonable range and it's a much quieter cabin. You do lose space in the rear seat, but as a lifestyle choice, that seems to be the better of the two. And if you want to stay in the Tata family, if you step down to the Nexon, you'll have a better overall experience in terms of how much you get for your money and how those cars feels, etc. Now, if you're not tied into the Tata family, the conclusion I am getting from here, and we'll test it to verify, is the benchmarks in this segment, the Curvv doesn't achieve the benchmarks in the lower class, which is the Sonnet Venue class, or in the upper class, which it wants to do, which is the Seltos and Creta class. So overall, this is a car that seems destined to be a decent second car in the family at best. Don't think about it as your primary. Have I missed anything?
No.
Rate my summary.
No cup holder still.
Oh, and if you like drinking coffee, this is the cup holder that you get with the Curvv. This one, the one that you're drawn with. I really loved how you jumped from there to Starbucks, though. I think it was awesome. that was such a great leap.
I mean, like Tata, immediately you think about Starbucks, man. I mean, they're the ones pushing that.
What's coming next? I know the MG Windsor is up.
Yeah.
I know the Carnival from Kia is next.
Yes. We'll have the Magnite facelift. Are you interested in that? Let us know.
Yeah.
Then, of course, at some point there'll be the Swift Desire, or rather just the Desire. That'll be happening. Kia has also said that they're bringing the EV9, which sounds cool. And I don't know when that's happening.
Okay.
So there's a lot.
So that's already 5 cars we've counted coming to
And
MotorInc
there's
First.
much.
Out of which Magnite facelift you want to tell us? It's a very specific question. If you'd like to see the Magnite facelift on MotorInc First, you have to tell us in the comments.
Yeah, that'll be good to know. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the bikes, again, there's a whole bunch of things coming.
Sorry, Shumi, I'm such an ass. Shumi, what's happening on the bikes front?
On the bikes front, thank you for asking. We've got the Gold Star coming in a few days. Okay. We haven't tested it yet as we record this. Then Triumph has updated the 400 speed. I'm not sure that we want to do that for MotorInc First, but we'll have to do stories on it. But they've got
Let's ask them.
No, I'm very clear about this. It's a facelift. Like it's a facelift with minor changes. It'll go to View, it'll go to FAQ. I don't think there's point doing MotorInc First because...
I want to know.
Because there's the second bike called the TR4, which is a very interesting proposition.
Okay.
It allows us to talk about how Triumph is repositioning the Speed 400 a little bit, and it's a slightly different engine.
The lower one is the one that you'd want to do an MF for?
Yeah. So I want to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
TR4 is the lower version. We'll do the TR4 for sure.
Okay, then I'm on.
Right. We have the Hero Destiny. Today, I'm 2 weeks, I think, 15 days from when I wrote the Destiny. But since the price hasn't come, we haven't recorded MotorInc First yet. We like the set complete before we open our mouth about it. Then the RR310 has been updated in the intervening time. That has to be done. So there's a lot of action coming.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's, what to look forward to.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add about Tata Motors, Curvv, ICE, EV before we sign off?
Let's say this is feedback. If next time we are out driving a Tata product like this, is there something specific that you'd like us to keep in mind, or a perspective that you could give me when I'm approaching it? That would be awesome. I'd appreciate it.
So a lot of the detail on the ICE has not been covered because we did in a lot of detail on the Curvv.EV. So if you have any issues there, I would suggest you watch the EV one, the cabin, etc. all transfer here very cleanly. In case there are still doubts after that, of course, you can always ask us a comment.
Something just struck me.
Yeah.
I was trying to make sense of the Curvv ICE. And I finally understood what its purpose is.
Yes.
It's a tactic to sell more Nexons and Curvv EVs. I'm serious.
I'm going to let you guys think about that idea.
I'm serious.
Yeah, I know you're serious. And I know why you're saying this also, because I've been in this conversation with you following the
Then it makes sense.
Same dots as you.
Because you see, it also followed the EV. So EV was given priority over the ICE.
Yeah.
So very clearly how where Tata's where the weight really lies is,
is
obvious.
the electric. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching. This has become very long drawn out as a conclusion, but we're going to close it here. We'll see you next time. Again, if you have any doubts, leave us a comment. Thank you so much.